You know what's wild? Right now, as you're listening to this, your brain is processing about 11 million pieces of information every single second. But here's the kicker. You're only consciously aware of about 40 of them. 40 out of 11 million. So where's everything else going? It's diving straight into the deepest, most mysterious part of your mind, working behind the scenes like some kind of biological supercomputer that never sleeps, never stops, and honestly, runs the show way more than you probably realize. Tonight, we're going down the rabbit hole of your subconscious mind. And I'm not talking about some mystical woo-woo stuff here. We're diving into the actual neuroscience, the hidden mechanisms, the bizarre experiments that have shocked researchers for decades. Because your subconscious isn't just some passive storage system. It's actively making decisions before you even know you've made them. It's solving problems while you sleep. It's holding on to memories you don't even remember having. And get this, it might actually be listening to everything I'm saying right now, even if you drift off to sleep. Let me tell you about something that happened in a lab at the Max Planck Institute back in 2008. Scientists hooked people up to brain scanners and asked them to make a simple choice. Press a button with either their left or right hand whenever they felt like it. Sounds easy, right? Here's where it gets creepy. The researchers could predict which hand the person would use up to 10 seconds before the person consciously decided. 10 seconds. That's an eternity in brain time. What this means is your subconscious mind was calling the shots, and your conscious mind was basically just along for the ride, thinking it was in charge the whole time. This isn't some fringe science either. This is peer-reviewed, replicated research that's been making psychologists and philosophers lose sleep for years. Because if our subconscious is making decisions before we're aware of them, what does that say about free will? What does that say about who's really running the show up there? But let's back up for a second. What exactly is the subconscious mind anyway? Think of your mind like an iceberg. The tiny part sticking out above water? That's your conscious awareness. The thoughts you're thinking right now, the words you're hearing, the decision to keep listening or scroll away. But underneath the surface is this massive hidden structure. That's your subconscious. It's everything your brain is doing that you're not actively aware of. It's controlling your heartbeat, filtering sensory information, storing memories, managing emotions, and running millions of automatic programs that keep you alive and functioning. Your subconscious is essentially the operating system of your brain. It's been collecting data since before you were born. Yeah, you heard that right. Studies have shown that babies in the womb can recognize their mother's voice and even specific stories that were read to them repeatedly. That's your subconscious, already hard at work, cataloging information before you even took your first breath. Now here's something that'll blow your mind. Your subconscious doesn't know the difference between reality and imagination. This has been proven over and over in psychological studies. When you vividly imagine something, the same neural pathways light up as when you actually experience it. This is why athletes use visualization techniques. When a basketball player mentally rehearses making free throws, their brain is literally practicing, strengthening the same neural connections they'd use in a real game. This is also why your dreams feel so real, and why sometimes you wake up confused about whether something actually happened or you just dreamed it. Your subconscious is running these simulations, and to your brain, they're just as valid as real experiences. It's processing, sorting, integrating information while you sleep, which is exactly why sleep is so crucial for memory and learning. Speaking of which, let's talk about what happens when you fall asleep. Because this is where things get really interesting. You might think sleep is just downtime, but your subconscious mind is actually more active during certain sleep stages than when you're awake. During REM sleep especially, your brain is firing on all cylinders, making connections between seemingly unrelated information, consolidating memories, processing emotions, and yes, generating those weird, vivid dreams that sometimes make absolutely no sense. But those nonsensical dreams, they're not random. They're your subconscious mind's way of working through problems, processing emotions, and making sense of your experiences. There's a reason people say sleep on it when faced with a tough decision. Your subconscious literally uses sleep time to work through complex problems. Let me tell you about a study that perfectly demonstrates the power of your sleeping brain. Researchers at Harvard Medical School gave people a complex number puzzle to solve. One group worked on it, then went to sleep. Another group stayed awake. When tested later, the people who slept were almost 3 times more likely to figure out the hidden rule that made the puzzle easy to solve. 3 times. Their subconscious minds were actively working on the problem while they were completely unconscious, organizing information and making connections that their conscious minds couldn't see. This isn't magic. It's neuroscience. While you sleep, your brain replays experiences from the day, but at a much faster speed, sometimes up to 20 times faster. It's like watching your life on fast forward. During this replay, your brain is literally rewiring itself, strengthening important connections and pruning away the ones that don't matter. It's deciding what to keep in long-term storage and what to toss out. And you have zero conscious control over this process. Your subconscious is also the keeper of every single experience you've ever had, even the ones you think you've forgotten. There are documented cases of people under hypnosis recalling incredibly specific details from early childhood, things their conscious mind had no access to. One famous case involved a woman who, under hypnosis, could recite entire pages from books she'd seen as a child, but consciously had no memory of. Her subconscious had photographed those pages and filed them away, waiting decades to be accessed again. This brings us to something called implicit memory. These are memories you don't consciously remember, but that influence your behavior anyway. Ever met someone and immediately felt uncomfortable around them, but couldn't figure out why? That's probably your subconscious recognizing something. Maybe they remind you of someone who hurt you in the past, or their body language triggered an old fear response. Your conscious mind has no idea what's happening, but your subconscious is pulling up old files and sounding alarm bells. This works the other way too. Ever heard a song and suddenly felt transported back to a specific moment in your past? That's your subconscious making connections. Smell is particularly powerful for this because the olfactory system has direct connections to the emotional centers of your brain. One whiff of something can unlock a flood of memories and feelings you didn't even know you had stored away. Now let's talk about something controversial: subliminal messaging. For decades, people have debated whether flashing words or images too quickly to be consciously perceived can actually influence behavior. The answer, according to modern neuroscience, is yes and no. Can a single frame of "buy popcorn" flashed during a movie make you crave popcorn? The research says the effect is way overblown, but can repeated exposure to subliminal stimuli have subtle effects on preferences and attitudes? Actually, yes. Studies have shown that people exposed to subliminal positive words tend to rate neutral things more favorably afterward. People primed with subliminal images of money become more individualistic and less helpful. Your subconscious is absorbing this information, processing it, and letting it influence your behavior, all without your conscious mind having any clue. Kind of makes you think differently about scrolling through social media, doesn't it? All those images, messages, and triggers are speaking directly to your subconscious mind. But here's where it gets really interesting. Your subconscious doesn't just absorb information passively. It's actively trying to make sense of the world, and it does this by creating patterns and models. This is called predictive processing. Essentially, your subconscious is constantly making predictions about what's going to happen next based on past experiences. Most of the time, these predictions are so accurate that you don't even notice them. When you catch a ball, you're not consciously calculating trajectories and velocities. Your subconscious has run those calculations thousands of times before and knows exactly where the ball will be. When you have a conversation, you're predicting what someone will say next, which is why it's jarring when they say something completely unexpected. Your subconscious prediction was wrong. This predictive ability is incredibly powerful, but it can also lead you astray. Your subconscious loves patterns, even when they don't exist. This is why we see faces in clouds, why we find meaning in coincidences, why we believe in lucky streaks at the casino. Our subconscious is working overtime to find patterns and make predictions, sometimes seeing connections that simply aren't there. This pattern-seeking behavior is also behind something called confirmation bias. Once your subconscious has decided something is true, it starts filtering information to support that belief. It'll notice all the evidence that confirms what you already think and conveniently ignore anything that contradicts it. This happens completely automatically. You genuinely believe you're being objective, but your subconscious is curating your reality behind the scenes. Think about the last time you learned someone's name. Maybe it was something common like Jennifer or Michael, and then suddenly you started seeing that name everywhere. It's not that there are suddenly more Jennifers in the world, it's that your subconscious is now primed to notice that name. This is called the frequency illusion, or the Bader-Meinhof phenomenon. Your subconscious has flagged that information as relevant, so now it's popping up on your radar constantly. You're not seeing more of it, you're just noticing it more. This filtering system is actually crucial for survival. Remember those 11 million pieces of information your brain processes every second. If all of that made it to your conscious awareness, you'd be completely overwhelmed. You'd be paralyzed by the sheer volume of sensory input, so your subconscious acts as a filter, deciding what's important enough to bring to your attention and what can be handled automatically. But here's the thing, you can influence what your subconscious pays attention to. This is where intention and focus come in. When you consciously focus on something repeatedly, you're essentially training your subconscious to prioritize that information. This is why, when you're thinking about buying a red car, you suddenly notice red cars everywhere. Your subconscious has been programmed to flag that as relevant information. Athletes and performers have figured this out. They use something called mental rehearsal, or visualization. A pianist doesn't just physically practice scales, they mentally practice too, running through the motions in their mind. Studies using brain imaging have shown that the motor cortex lights up during mental practice almost as much as during physical practice. The subconscious doesn't fully distinguish between the two, so both create and strengthen neural pathways. There was this incredible study done with basketball players. They split players into 3 groups. One group physically practiced free throws every day. Another group only visualized making free throws. The third group did nothing. After 30 days, the group that physically practiced improved by 24%. The group that did nothing showed no improvement. But here's the kicker. The group that only visualized improved by 23%. Almost the same as actual physical practice. That's the power of your subconscious mind. But visualization isn't just about sports. Your subconscious is constantly visualizing your future, whether you're aware of it or not. It's running simulations, playing out scenarios, preparing you for potential outcomes. This is why anxiety exists. Your subconscious is visualizing negative outcomes, and your body is responding as if those outcomes are real. Your heart races, your palms sweat, your muscles tense, all because of something that only exists in your mind. The reverse is true too. When you're excited about something, your subconscious is visualizing positive outcomes, flooding your body with feel-good chemicals. This is why anticipation can sometimes feel almost as good as the actual event. Your subconscious is giving you a preview, a little taste of what's to come. Now let's talk about habits, because this is where your subconscious really shows its power. Every habit you have, good or bad, is essentially a program running in your subconscious mind. Think about tying your shoes. When you first learned, it required intense concentration. Every loop, every pull required conscious thought. But now, you do it without thinking. The program has been downloaded into your subconscious, and it runs automatically. This is actually how your brain saves energy. Conscious thought is expensive in terms of brain resources. It requires a lot of glucose and oxygen, so your brain is constantly trying to automate things to turn conscious processes into unconscious ones. This is fantastic for efficiency, but it's also why bad habits are so hard to break. They're not just behaviors. They're deeply ingrained neural pathways in your subconscious mind. Research shows it takes anywhere from 18 to 254 days to form a new habit, with an average of 66 days. But here's what's really happening during that time. You're building a new neural pathway. Every time you repeat the behavior, you're strengthening that pathway. It's like hiking through a forest. The first time, you're pushing through brush and branches. But walk the same path repeatedly, and eventually, you've got a clear trail. That's what's happening in your brain. The fascinating thing is, Your subconscious doesn't judge these habits as good or bad. It just executes the program. This is why you can know smoking is bad for you, but still crave a cigarette. Your conscious mind knows the facts, but your subconscious has a deeply ingrained program that associates smoking with stress relief or social connection or whatever reward you've taught it to expect. Knowledge alone isn't enough to change behavior because you're fighting against subconscious programming. So how do you actually change subconscious programming? This is the million-dollar question, and honestly, it's what therapy, self-help books, and personal development programs have been trying to figure out forever. The key is understanding that your subconscious learns through repetition and emotion. It's not enough to just think differently. You have to feel differently and do differently, over and over again. There's a concept in neuroscience called neuroplasticity. For a long time, scientists believed that once your brain developed in childhood, it was pretty much set. But we now know that's completely wrong. Your brain is constantly rewiring itself throughout your entire life. Every thought, every experience, every action is physically changing the structure of your brain. The neurons that fire together wire together. This means you can literally rewire your subconscious mind, but it takes consistent effort. One of the most effective ways to influence your subconscious is through something called spaced repetition. This is why cramming for a test doesn't work as well as studying over time. Your subconscious needs repeated exposure to information for it to stick. It's looking for patterns, for things that keep showing up, because those must be important. One-off experiences might make it to your conscious memory, but they're not getting hardwired into your subconscious unless they're repeated or emotionally charged. Emotion is the other key. Experiences that carry strong emotions get priority processing in your subconscious. This is why you can forget what you had for lunch 3 days ago, but remember exactly where you were and what you were doing on September 11th. The emotional intensity of that day burned those memories into your subconscious mind. Your brain is essentially saying, "This is important. File this away. We need to remember this." This is actually an evolutionary advantage. Events that triggered strong emotions, fear, joy, surprise, were usually important for survival. If something almost killed you, you'd better remember it so you can avoid it next time. If something brought you great pleasure, you'd better remember that too, so you can seek it out. Your subconscious is constantly learning from emotionally charged experiences, updating its models of the world. But here's where it gets tricky. Your subconscious doesn't always interpret emotions correctly. A child who is repeatedly told they're not good enough might develop a deep subconscious belief about their self-worth, even if those messages came from an unhealthy parent or a bully. The subconscious doesn't fact-check. It just absorbs the information paired with the emotion. This is how trauma gets encoded. It's not just the memory of what happened, it's the emotion and the meaning your subconscious attached to it. This brings us to something really important: self-talk. The things you say to yourself, the internal narrative running in your head, is constantly programming your subconscious. When you repeatedly tell yourself you're bad at math, or you're not a morning person, or you always mess things up, your subconscious is listening. It's taking notes. And then it starts making those things true by influencing your behavior in ways you're not even aware of. There's actually research backing this up. Studies on self-affirmations show they can have real effects on behavior and performance, but not in the way most people think. Simply repeating, "I am confident" in the mirror doesn't magically make you confident, but repeated affirmations can start to shift your subconscious attention. You begin noticing evidence that supports the affirmation. You start acting in slightly different ways. Over time, these small shifts can compound into real change. The most powerful affirmations are specific and believable. Instead of, "I am a millionaire" when you're broke, try something like, "I am taking steps every day to improve my financial situation." Your subconscious can get on board with that because it's true and achievable. You're not trying to force it to accept something it knows is false. You're gradually shifting its focus and expectations. Now let's talk about something that sounds like science fiction, but is actually well documented: priming. This is when exposure to one thing influences your response to something else, all happening at the subconscious level. In one famous study, people were asked to unscramble sentences containing words related to elderly people. Words like wrinkled, Florida, Bingo. Afterward, these people literally walked slower down the hallway compared to a control group. They'd been subconsciously primed with the concept of being old, and their behavior changed without them realizing it. Another study had people hold either a warm or cold cup of coffee before meeting someone new. The people holding warm coffee rated the stranger as having a warmer personality. The physical sensation of warmth was subconsciously transferred to their judgment of the person. This seems crazy, right? But your subconscious is constantly making these kinds of associations, drawing connections between seemingly unrelated things. This has huge implications for everyday life. The media you consume, the people you spend time with, the environment you're in, all of it is priming your subconscious, influencing your thoughts and behaviors in ways you don't consciously register. This isn't about being paranoid, it's about being aware. Your subconscious is like a sponge, absorbing everything around you. There's a darker side to this subconscious influence, and we need to talk about it. Advertising and marketing professionals have spent billions of dollars figuring out how to speak directly to your subconscious mind. They know conscious resistance is strong. If an ad directly tells you to buy something, you might push back. But if they can slip past your conscious defenses and plant seeds in your subconscious, you'll think the desire to buy came from you. This is why brands spend so much on creating feelings and associations rather than just listing product features. They're not trying to convince your conscious mind. They're trying to program your subconscious. That beer commercial isn't really about the beer. It's about associating the beer with friendship, fun, and good times. Drink this beer, your subconscious learns, and you'll feel connected and happy. It's Pavlovian conditioning wrapped in a 30-second spot. Social media has taken this to a whole new level. The endless scroll, the variable reward of likes and comments, the carefully curated images. It's all designed to hijack your subconscious reward systems. Your brain releases dopamine, not when you get a like, but in anticipation of possibly getting a like. It's the same neural pathway that makes gambling addictive. Your conscious mind might know you're wasting time, but your subconscious has been trained to crave that next hit of social validation. But let's flip this around. If your subconscious can be influenced by external forces, you can also intentionally influence it yourself. This is where practices like meditation come in. Meditation isn't about stopping thoughts or achieving some blissed out state. It's about becoming aware of your subconscious processes. It's about watching your thoughts arise without getting caught up in them, which gives you insight into how your subconscious is operating. Studies using brain imaging have shown that regular meditation actually changes brain structure. Areas associated with emotional regulation and self-awareness get thicker. Areas associated with stress and anxiety get smaller. You're literally rewiring your subconscious through consistent practice. And here's the cool part. These changes can happen in as little as 8 weeks of regular meditation. But you don't have to sit on a cushion to access your subconscious. There are lots of ways in. Journaling, for instance, can reveal subconscious patterns. When you free write without censoring yourself, you're giving your subconscious a voice. You'll often be surprised by what comes out. Thoughts and feelings you didn't know you had. Solutions to problems you've been struggling with. Your subconscious has been working on these things in the background, and journaling gives it a way to communicate. Dreams are another portal into the subconscious. Now, I'm not saying every dream has some deep symbolic meaning. Sometimes a cigar is just a cigar, and sometimes a dream about showing up to work naked is just your brain randomly firing neurons. But recurring dreams, emotionally intense dreams, dreams that stick with you, those are often your subconscious trying to work through something. There's actually a technique called lucid dreaming, where you become aware you're dreaming while still in the dream. With practice, you can even control what happens in the dream. This isn't just fun and games. Researchers have found that lucid dreamers can use this state to work through fears, practice skills, and even solve creative problems. You're essentially having a direct conversation with your subconscious mind in its native language of symbols and emotions. Speaking of symbols, your subconscious thinks in images and feelings more than words. This is why metaphors are so powerful. When someone says they're carrying a heavy burden, your subconscious creates an actual feeling of weight and pressure. When you visualize yourself succeeding, your subconscious doesn't just hear the words. It creates the feeling of success, the images of success, which then influence your behavior. This is why storytelling is such a fundamental part of human culture. Stories speak directly to the subconscious. When you read a good novel or watch a great movie, you're not just passively receiving information. Your subconscious is simulating those experiences. The same brain regions activate when you read about someone running as when you actually run. Your subconscious is living that story, learning from it, integrating it. This is also why personal identity is so tied to the stories we tell about ourselves. Your subconscious has created a narrative about who you are based on your experiences, and it works hard to maintain consistency with that narrative. If you believe you're not a creative person, your subconscious will guide you away from creative pursuits. If you believe you're bad with money, you'll subconsciously make financial decisions that confirm that belief. These stories become self-fulfilling prophecies. The good news is, you can change the story. But you can't just consciously decide to have a different identity and expect your subconscious to go along with it. You have to provide evidence. You have to act in ways that support the new story, over and over again, until your subconscious updates its model of who you are. This is why identity-based habits are so effective. Instead of saying, "I want to write a book," you say, "I am a writer," and then behave like a writer. Your subconscious starts to shift its understanding of your identity. Let's talk about something that happens to everyone, but rarely gets discussed. Those moments when your subconscious suddenly delivers a solution you've been struggling with. You're in the shower, or driving, or just waking up, and boom, there's the answer. This isn't random. Your subconscious has been working on the problem the whole time, making connections your conscious mind couldn't see. There's a famous story about the chemist Auguste Kekulé, who was trying to figure out the structure of benzene. He'd been consciously working on it for ages with no success. Then one night, he dreamed of a snake eating its own tail. He woke up and realized benzene had a ring structure. His subconscious had solved the problem and delivered it in the form of a dream symbol. This kind of thing happens more often than you'd think. Thomas Edison used to take advantage of this subconscious problem solving. He'd sit in a chair holding ball bearings in his hands while thinking about whatever challenge he was facing. As he drifted off to sleep, the ball bearings would drop and wake him up. He'd be in that twilight state between waking and sleeping, where the subconscious is more accessible, and he'd often have insights he couldn't reach through pure conscious thought. Salvador Dali used a similar technique. He called it slumber with a key. He'd hold a key over a metal plate, and as he fell asleep, the key would drop and wake him. He'd then paint the surreal images from that in-between state. These artists and inventors understood something important. The subconscious has access to information and connections that the conscious mind does not. This is because the conscious mind is linear and logical. It follows rules, thinks step by step. But the subconscious is associative. It makes wild leaps, connects seemingly unrelated concepts. This is where creativity comes from. When people say inspiration struck them out of nowhere, what they mean is their subconscious made a connection that their conscious mind hadn't considered. But here's the thing. Your subconscious can only work with the raw materials you give it. This is why people who do great creative work are often voracious consumers of information. They read widely, experience different things, talk to diverse people. They're feeding their subconscious a rich database of information to draw from. Then, when they're consciously working on a problem, their subconscious is in the background, mixing and matching all that information in novel ways. There's also something called incubation in creativity research. This is the phenomenon where stepping away from a problem often leads to better solutions than continuing to consciously work on it. You've probably experienced this. You're stuck on something, you take a break, and when you come back, the answer is obvious. During that break, your subconscious was doing its thing, making connections without the interference of your conscious, logical mind. This has implications for how we structure our work and learning. The modern world values constant productivity, constant conscious effort. But some of the most important work happens when we're not consciously working at all. Taking walks, daydreaming, sleeping. These aren't wasted time. They're when your subconscious processes and integrates everything you've been learning and experiencing. In fact, there's research showing that people who take breaks and get adequate sleep are significantly more productive and creative than those who grind continuously. Your conscious mind might feel guilty about taking time off, but your subconscious needs that processing time. It's during rest that insights emerge, that learning consolidates, that creative connections form. Now let's talk about intuition, because this is your subconscious communicating with you in real time. Intuition isn't mystical. It's your subconscious rapidly processing information based on past experiences and patterns it's learned. When you get a gut feeling about something, that's your subconscious picking up on cues your conscious mind hasn't registered. Studies have shown that experts in any field can make accurate snap judgments because their subconscious has logged thousands of hours of pattern recognition. A chess master can look at a board and immediately know the best move, not because they're consciously calculating every possibility, but because their subconscious recognizes patterns from games they've studied and played. A firefighter might suddenly order everyone out of a building seconds before it collapses, not because they consciously heard anything wrong, but because their subconscious noticed something off about the fire's behavior. This is why experience is so valuable. It's not just about conscious knowledge. It's about training your subconscious to recognize patterns and anomalies. Malcolm Gladwell wrote about this in Blink, how people can make better decisions in the blink of an eye than after lengthy conscious analysis, but only when they have relevant expertise. Without that training, snap judgments are just biases and assumptions. And this is where we need to be careful with intuition. Your subconscious can also lead you astray. It's basing its rapid assessments on past patterns, which means it can be prejudiced, stereotyping, jumping to conclusions based on limited information. Just because something feels right doesn't mean it is right. Sometimes your intuition is spot-on expertise. Sometimes it's just unexamined bias. The relationship between conscious and subconscious is really more like a partnership than a hierarchy. Neither is better or more important. They each have strengths and limitations. Your conscious mind is great at logical analysis, planning, language, and deliberate thought. Your subconscious is great at pattern recognition, emotional processing, automatic behaviors, and parallel processing of vast amounts of information. The problems arise when these two systems are out of sync. When your conscious mind wants one thing, but your subconscious is programmed for something else, you get internal conflict. This is the experience of feeling stuck, of self-sabotage, of knowing what you should do, but somehow not doing it. Your conscious intention is being overridden by subconscious programming. This happens a lot with things like public speaking or performance anxiety. Consciously, you know you've prepared, you know the material, you know logically you'll be fine. But your subconscious has flagged social judgment as a threat, and it's triggering your fight or flight response. Your heart races, your hands shake, your mind goes blank. You're experiencing a conflict between conscious understanding and subconscious reaction. The solution isn't to fight your subconscious. That rarely works. The solution is to gradually reprogram it through experience. Every time you give a presentation and survive, every time you face the fear and it turns out okay, you're providing new data to your subconscious. You're saying, see? Not actually dangerous. Over time, the subconscious updates its threat assessment. The anxiety lessens, but this takes repeated exposure, not just conscious reasoning. This is the basis of exposure therapy for phobias and anxiety disorders. You can't just tell someone with a spider phobia that spiders are harmless and expect the fear to disappear. Their conscious mind already knows that. The fear is coming from the subconscious, which has associated spiders with danger. Exposure therapy gradually retrains the subconscious by providing safe experiences with the feared object, slowly updating that association. But you don't need therapy to apply this principle. Anytime you're trying to change a deep-seated pattern or overcome a fear, you need to work with your subconscious, not against it. This means starting small, building positive experiences, and being patient with the process. Your subconscious didn't develop its current programming overnight, and it won't change overnight either. There's also something called cognitive dissonance that happens when conscious and subconscious are misaligned. This is the uncomfortable feeling when your actions don't match your beliefs. If you consciously value health but subconsciously crave junk food, every time you eat poorly, you experience dissonance. Your mind tries to resolve this discomfort, usually by changing your beliefs to match your behavior rather than the other way around. You tell yourself things like, "I'll start eating better tomorrow," or "one more won't hurt," or "life is too short to not enjoy food." This is your conscious mind, creating rationalizations to ease the conflict with your subconscious drives. Understanding this can help you catch yourself in the act. When you notice yourself making excuses or justifications for behaviors you consciously want to change, that's a sign you're dealing with subconscious programming that needs to be addressed. Another fascinating aspect of the subconscious is something called transference. This is when your subconscious transfers feelings and patterns from past relationships onto new ones. Maybe you had a critical parent, and now you automatically get defensive when anyone gives you feedback, even constructive feedback from someone who cares about you. Your subconscious is applying old patterns to new situations where they don't fit. This happens in all kinds of relationships. The reason some people keep dating the same type of person, even though it never works out? Subconscious programming. Their conscious mind might say they want someone different, but their subconscious is attracted to familiar patterns, even if those patterns are unhealthy. It's like their internal radar is tuned to a specific frequency based on past experiences. Breaking these patterns requires becoming aware of them, which is why therapy can be so helpful. A good therapist helps you see your subconscious patterns, brings them into conscious awareness so you can make different choices. But you can do some of this work yourself, through reflection and honest self-examination. When you notice patterns in your relationships or behaviors, ask yourself where they might be coming from. What earlier experiences might have programmed these responses? Now let's talk about something really interesting: the role of the subconscious in physical health. There's a whole field called psychoneuroimmunology that studies how psychological factors affect the immune system. It turns out your subconscious mental and emotional states have real, measurable effects on your physical health. Chronic stress, which is often driven by subconscious worries and fears, suppresses immune function. It increases inflammation, raises blood pressure, disrupts sleep, and contributes to a host of health problems. Your subconscious mind, constantly running worst-case scenarios and perceiving threats, is literally making you sick. This isn't metaphorical. This is actual biological cause and effect. The reverse is also true. Positive mental states, a sense of safety and connection, optimism about the future, these things boost immune function and promote healing. There are documented cases of people recovering from serious illnesses after major life changes that reduced stress and increased well-being. Their subconscious shifted from threat mode to safety mode, and their body responded. The placebo effect is maybe the most dramatic example of the subconscious mind's power over the body. Give someone a sugar pill and tell them it's powerful medicine, and a significant percentage will get better. Their conscious belief and subconscious expectation of healing trigger actual physiological changes. In some studies, placebos have been shown to be up to 60 to 90% as effective as real medication for things like pain and depression. This isn't just in your head, in the dismissive sense. The healing is real. The mechanism is the subconscious mind triggering real biological processes, releasing endorphins, reducing stress hormones, modulating the immune response. Your subconscious belief that you're getting better creates the conditions for actual improvement. There's even something called the nocebo effect, which is the opposite. If you believe something will harm you, it often does, even if it's completely inert. People who think they're sensitive to certain foods will develop symptoms when exposed to them, even in double-blind tests where they're actually given harmless substances. Their subconscious expectation of harm creates real physical symptoms. This has huge implications for how we think about health and healing. I'm not saying you can think your way out of serious illness, or that medicine is not necessary. But your subconscious beliefs and expectations play a much bigger role in your health than most people realize. This is why two people can have the same diagnosis, but completely different outcomes. Their subconscious is either working with or against the healing process. Let me tell you about something called the mind-body connection, which is really just the subconscious expressing itself through physical symptoms. Ever notice how, when you're stressed, you get headaches or stomach problems? That's not coincidence. Your subconscious emotional state is being translated into physical sensations. Some people even develop what's called conversion disorder, where psychological stress manifests as physical symptoms that have no organic cause. Paralysis, blindness, seizures, all with no underlying physical damage. Their subconscious is expressing distress through the body. Treatment isn't about addressing physical problems, it's about resolving the underlying psychological issues. But again, this happens on a smaller scale all the time. Tension headaches, digestive issues, chronic pain, fatigue. These often have significant subconscious emotional components. Your body is holding stress, fear, anxiety in the form of muscle tension and physiological dysregulation. This is why practices like yoga, massage, and somatic therapy can be so effective. They're not just working on the body, they're helping release subconscious stress stored in the body. There's a researcher named Bessel van der Kolk who wrote a book called The Body Keeps the Score, about trauma and how it's stored in the body. He found that traumatic experiences get encoded not just as memories, but as physical sensations and responses. Your subconscious holds onto the trauma in your nervous system. This is why trauma survivors can be triggered by seemingly random things. A smell, a sound, a feeling. Their subconscious recognizes something associated with the trauma and launches the body into a defensive response. Healing from trauma isn't just about processing the memories consciously. It's about working with the subconscious to update those defensive responses, to help the nervous system learn that it's safe now. This is why approaches like EMDR, which work with both conscious memory and subconscious processing, can be so effective for trauma. But you do not have to have capital T trauma for your subconscious to be carrying stress and defensive patterns. We all accumulate little traumas, disappointments, fears, and our subconscious holds on to them, creating habitual tension and vigilance. Part of mental health is regularly checking in with your subconscious, processing emotions, releasing tension, rather than letting it all accumulate. Now, I want to talk about something that might sound weird, but is actually backed by solid science: the connection between your gut and your subconscious mind. Your digestive system has its own nervous system, sometimes called the second brain, with over 100 million neurons. This enteric nervous system is in constant communication with your brain, and much of this communication is happening below the level of consciousness. Your gut produces about 95% of your body's serotonin, the neurotransmitter associated with mood and well-being. The bacteria in your gut, your microbiome, influence this production. Studies have shown that changing your gut bacteria can literally change your mood and behavior. In one experiment, researchers transplanted gut bacteria from anxious mice into calm mice, and the calm mice became anxious. They transplanted gut bacteria from brave mice into timid mice, and the timid mice became braver. This works in humans too. Your diet, which affects your microbiome, is influencing your subconscious emotional state in ways you're probably not aware of. When you eat poorly and feel crappy, it's not just about energy levels. Your gut bacteria are communicating with your brain, affecting neurotransmitter production, influencing your subconscious mood and even decision-making. This is why gut feelings are called gut feelings. There's actually a physiological basis for it. Your subconscious is receiving signals from your enteric nervous system and integrating them into your decision-making process. When something doesn't sit right with you, that might be literal. Your gut is sending warning signals to your subconscious. Let's shift gears and talk about the subconscious mind and relationships, because this is where things get really complex. Every interaction you have with another person involves 4 entities: your conscious mind, your subconscious mind, their conscious mind, and their subconscious mind. And often the subconscious minds are doing most of the communicating. Body language, tone of voice, micro-expressions. These are largely subconscious communications. When you meet someone and instantly like or dislike them, that's your subconscious picking up on thousands of tiny signals and making a rapid assessment. When you sense someone is lying, even though their words seem truthful, your subconscious has detected inconsistencies between their verbal and nonverbal communication. Studies show that the majority of communication is nonverbal. The actual words account for only a small percentage of the message being transmitted. The rest is tone, facial expressions, posture, gestures, all processed primarily by the subconscious. This is why text-based communication is so often misunderstood. You're only getting the words, missing all the subconscious signals that provide context and emotional content. Your subconscious is also constantly mirroring other people. This is called the chameleon effect. When you like someone or feel rapport with them, you unconsciously start matching their body language, speech patterns, even their breathing. This happens automatically, below conscious awareness. And it goes both ways. When someone mirrors you, you subconsciously feel more connected to them. Salespeople and con artists know this and use it deliberately. They'll consciously mirror your body language to create a false sense of rapport and trust. Your subconscious picks up on the matching and signals safety and connection, even though the mimicry is calculated and manipulative. This is why it's important to be aware of these subconscious processes, not to become paranoid, but to recognize when they might be leading you astray. In close relationships, subconscious communication becomes even more important. Couples who've been together a long time can often sense each other's moods and thoughts without words. They've trained their subconscious minds to read each other's signals. But this can also lead to problems. If you're subconsciously expecting your partner to behave a certain way based on past patterns, you might interpret their actions through that lens even if they're trying to do something different. This is why communication in relationships is so crucial. Your subconscious might be telling you a story about what your partner is thinking or feeling, but that story might be completely wrong. It's based on your past experiences, your fears, your assumptions, not necessarily on reality. Checking in verbally, asking rather than assuming, helps align conscious understanding and prevents subconscious misinterpretation. There's also something called emotional contagion, where emotions spread subconsciously between people. If you're around someone who's anxious, you'll often start feeling anxious too, even if you don't consciously know why. Your subconscious is picking up on their emotional state and mirroring it. This is why the energy of the people around you matters so much. You're not just consciously influenced by them, your subconscious is absorbing and reflecting their emotional states. Ever been in a great mood and then talked to a negative person and suddenly felt drained and down? That's emotional contagion at work. Their subconscious emotional state affected yours. The reverse works too. Positive people can lift your mood without saying anything particularly uplifting. Their subconscious positivity is contagious. This is one reason why environment is so important for mental health and productivity. If you're constantly in spaces or around people that trigger negative subconscious reactions, it will affect you, no matter how much you consciously try to stay positive. Your subconscious is being programmed by your environment all the time. Now let's talk about something that affects everyone but isn't discussed enough: subconscious self-sabotage. This is when part of you consciously wants something, but your subconscious actively works against it. You want to lose weight, but keep eating poorly. You want a relationship, but push people away. You want success, but procrastinate on important projects. What's happening? Usually, it's because your subconscious has associated the thing you consciously want with some kind of danger or discomfort. Maybe you subconsciously associate being attractive with unwanted attention. Maybe you associate intimacy with vulnerability and potential hurt. Maybe you associate success with increased pressure and responsibility. So, even though consciously you want these things, your subconscious is protecting you from the perceived threat by sabotaging your efforts. This isn't a moral failing. It's not about willpower. It's about conflicting programs in your mind. The key to overcoming self-sabotage is identifying what your subconscious is afraid of. What's the hidden benefit of staying stuck? What's the perceived danger in achieving your goal? Once you understand the subconscious logic, you can start to address it. Sometimes this requires reframing. If your subconscious associates success with stress, you need to find examples of successful people who seem balanced and happy. You need to consciously expose yourself to a different model of success. If your subconscious associates vulnerability with danger, you need small, safe experiences of opening up and being accepted. You're providing new data to update the subconscious program. There's a therapeutic approach called internal family systems that treats the mind as if it contains multiple subconscious parts, each with its own perspective and agenda. The part that wants to eat healthy, and the part that craves comfort food. The part that wants to be productive, and the part that wants to avoid stress. Rather than fighting these parts, you acknowledge them, understand what they're trying to protect you from, and help them work together. This might sound a bit out there, but it's actually really effective because it matches how the subconscious actually works. You don't have one unified subconscious mind. You have multiple systems, formed at different times, holding different beliefs, pursuing different goals. Internal conflict isn't a sign something's wrong with you. It's a normal result of having a complex mind with a complex history. The key is becoming aware of these different parts and their agendas. When you feel internal conflict, instead of just pushing through or giving up, pause and ask yourself, what part of me wants this? What part of me is resisting? What is each part afraid of? This kind of internal dialogue can reveal subconscious motivations and help you find solutions that address everyone's concerns. Let's talk about memory more deeply, because your subconscious is essentially the repository of everything you've ever experienced. But here's the thing. Memory isn't like a video recording. Every time you remember something, you're actually reconstructing it. And each reconstruction is influenced by your current emotional state, beliefs, and experiences. Your subconscious is constantly editing your past. This is why eyewitness testimony is so unreliable. People genuinely believe they remember things clearly, but studies show memory is incredibly malleable. Researchers have been able to implant false memories by simply suggesting events that never happened. Your subconscious will fill in gaps, create coherent narratives, even fabricate entire scenes, all while you're completely convinced these memories are accurate. This has huge implications. The story you tell yourself about your past, it's probably not entirely accurate. Your subconscious has been editing it to fit your current self-concept and beliefs. This isn't lying. It's how memory works. But it means you should hold your memories a bit more lightly, especially the emotional interpretations you've attached to them. Here's something really interesting. You can actually change your relationship to memories by consciously reframing them. There's a therapy technique where you revisit traumatic memories but add a different ending or perspective. You're not changing what happened, but you're changing how your subconscious has encoded it. You're giving your younger self the support, understanding, or power they didn't have at the time. And this actually helps process the trauma, because your subconscious doesn't strongly distinguish between imagination and reality. The new narrative becomes integrated into the memory. Your subconscious is also the source of nostalgia. It's constantly looking back at the past, often romanticizing it, filtering out the negative, and emphasizing the positive. This is usually adaptive. It gives you a sense of continuity and helps maintain self-esteem. But excessive nostalgia can be problematic if it leads you to believe the past was better than the present, which can prevent you from fully engaging with your current life. There's also something called childhood amnesia. Most people don't have clear memories from before age 3 or 4. This isn't because nothing important happened then. Your brain was developing rapidly, learning constantly. But the way memory systems work in early childhood is different. Your subconscious still holds those early experiences though. They're encoded as feelings, patterns, templates for relationships and understanding the world, even if you can't consciously recall specific events. This is why early childhood experiences have such lasting effects. They're foundational programming for your subconscious. The attachment style you formed with your caregivers, that becomes a template for all future relationships. The way you were taught to handle emotions, that becomes your default subconscious response. You can change these patterns, but first you have to be aware they exist and understand where they came from. Let's talk about something that's become really relevant in modern life: the effect of technology on your subconscious. Every notification, every scroll, every swipe is training your subconscious. Tech companies employ psychologists specifically to make their products as addictive as possible. They're deliberately targeting your subconscious reward systems, creating habits that bypass your conscious decision-making. The average person checks their phone over 150 times a day. That's not a conscious choice each time. It's subconscious habit, triggered by boredom, stress, or just the passage of a few minutes. Your subconscious has been trained that phone equals potential reward, so it nudges you to check constantly. This is depleting your attention span, fracturing your focus, and keeping you in a state of low-level anxiety, always waiting for the next notification, the next update. Social media particularly affects your subconscious self-image. You're constantly exposed to curated versions of other people's lives, and your subconscious is making comparisons. No matter how much you consciously know that Instagram isn't reality, your subconscious is absorbing those images and internalizing the message that you're not measuring up. Studies have shown clear links between social media use and increased anxiety, depression, and poor body image, especially in young people. The solution isn't necessarily to abandon technology, but to be conscious of how it's programming your subconscious. Set boundaries, create tech-free times and spaces, curate what you consume. Unfollow accounts that make you feel bad. Follow accounts that inspire or educate. Be deliberate about what you're feeding your subconscious mind, because it's absorbing everything and it's affecting how you think and feel. There's also the issue of attention. Your subconscious is being trained for constant distraction. When was the last time you sat and did nothing for even 5 minutes? Just sat with your thoughts. Most people find this incredibly uncomfortable now. Their subconscious has been trained to seek constant stimulation. Boredom has become intolerable, which means you're missing out on the mental downtime your subconscious needs to process and integrate experiences. Boredom isn't the enemy. It's actually when some of your best thinking happens. When your conscious mind isn't occupied, your subconscious can surface insights and make connections. But if you immediately fill every spare moment with content, scrolling, watching, listening, you're denying your subconscious that processing time. This is part of why so many people feel mentally cluttered and overwhelmed. They're constantly inputting, but never processing. Now let's talk about learning and how your subconscious is actually key to mastery in any skill. When you're first learning something, it requires intense conscious focus. You're thinking about every step. But with practice, the skill moves from conscious to subconscious. This is what mastery looks like, when you can perform at a high level without thinking about it. Musicians talk about this all the time. When you're learning a piece, you're consciously aware of every note. But in performance, you have to let go of conscious control and trust your subconscious. If you start thinking too much about what your fingers are doing, you'll actually mess up. Your subconscious can coordinate complex movements faster and more fluidly than your conscious mind. This applies to all kinds of expertise. Athletes call it being in the zone. Writers talk about flow state. It's when your subconscious takes over and you're performing effortlessly. But here's the thing, you can't force this state. You can only create conditions that allow it to happen. You have to do the conscious practice to build the skill, but then you have to trust your subconscious to execute. Overthinking is actually the enemy of performance. Your conscious mind is too slow for split-second decisions. When a baseball player is hitting a ball, they have less than half a second from when the ball leaves the pitcher's hand to when they need to swing. There's no time for conscious analysis. Their subconscious has to recognize the pitch type and trajectory and coordinate the swing. Conscious thought would just slow them down. This is why practice is so important. You're not just building muscle memory. You're training your subconscious to recognize patterns and respond appropriately. The more you practice, the more sophisticated your subconscious patterns become. Eventually, you develop intuition, the ability to make correct decisions without knowing consciously how you knew. But there's a trap here too. Sometimes your subconscious can lock in patterns that aren't optimal. This is why musicians sometimes need to consciously slow down and fix bad habits. Their subconscious has automated an inefficient technique. Breaking that pattern requires bringing it back into conscious awareness, correcting it, and then re-automating it correctly. The same thing happens with thinking patterns. Your subconscious develops habitual ways of interpreting situations and responding to them. If these patterns are healthy, great. But if they're not, if you habitually assume the worst, or take things personally, or react defensively, then those patterns will keep playing out until you consciously intervene and create new ones. This is actually what a lot of cognitive behavioral therapy does. It helps you identify automatic negative thoughts. These are subconscious thought patterns that happen so fast you do not even notice them. Once you become aware of them, you can consciously challenge and replace them. Over time, the new patterns become automatic. Your subconscious has been reprogrammed. Let me tell you about something called learned helplessness, which is a subconscious pattern that can be really debilitating. In experiments, dogs were put in situations where they received shocks they couldn't escape. Eventually, even when the barriers were removed and they could escape, they didn't try. They'd learned at a subconscious level that their actions didn't matter, so they became passive even when the situation changed. This happens to people too. If you've experienced repeated situations where you felt powerless, your subconscious might develop a learned helplessness pattern. Even when circumstances change and you actually do have power and choices, your subconscious keeps you passive. You don't try because you've learned trying doesn't work. This is a huge component of depression. This subconscious belief that nothing you do matters. The way out is gradual relearning. Small experiences of agency and success. Proving to your subconscious that actions do have consequences, that you can affect outcomes. This is why even tiny victories matter when you're depressed. You're not just accomplishing a task, you're retraining your subconscious to believe in your efficacy. Let's talk about language and the subconscious, because words have power beyond their literal meanings. Your subconscious responds to connotations, associations, and emotional tones. This is why affirmations work when they're done right. It's not the specific words that matter. It's the feeling and belief they create in your subconscious. But language can also limit you. The words you have available shape how you think and what you perceive. There are languages that have dozens of words for different types of snow, and speakers of those languages can actually perceive finer distinctions in snow than people who just have one word for it. Your vocabulary expands or constrains your subconscious categories. This is why learning new concepts and vocabulary is so powerful. You're not just adding information. You're giving your subconscious new categories, new ways of parsing reality. When you learn about cognitive biases, for example, you start noticing them in yourself and others. The concept gives your subconscious a framework for recognizing patterns it might have missed before. The internal dialogue you have with yourself is constantly programming your subconscious. If you habitually speak to yourself harshly, criticizing and berating yourself, your subconscious absorbs that as truth. It doesn't recognize that the critical voice is just one perspective. It internalizes it as fact. This becomes part of your subconscious self-concept. Changing your self-talk isn't about toxic positivity or pretending everything is great when it's not. It's about being accurate and fair with yourself. When you make a mistake, instead of, "I'm so stupid," try, "That didn't work, but I can learn from it." You're giving your subconscious different data to work with. Over time, this shifts the underlying beliefs. There's also something called self-distancing that can be helpful. Research shows that talking to yourself in the third person, or using your name instead of "I," can reduce emotional reactivity and improve decision-making. Your name, "You can handle this," feels different than "I can handle this." It creates a tiny bit of space between your conscious awareness and your subconscious emotional reaction, which can help you respond more effectively. Now let's dive into something fascinating. The role of metaphor in subconscious thinking. Your subconscious doesn't work primarily with abstract logic. It works with concrete images, feelings, and metaphors. This is why parables and stories have been used for teaching across all cultures. They speak the language of the subconscious. When you say you're carrying a heavy load, your subconscious creates an actual felt sense of weight and burden. When you say you're seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, your subconscious generates feelings of hope and direction. These aren't just figures of speech. They're creating real subconscious experiences that affect your emotional state and behavior. You can use this deliberately. If you're feeling stuck, you might visualize yourself as trapped in a box and then imagine breaking out. Your subconscious responds to this metaphor. It's not literal, but it's real in terms of psychological effect. Therapists use metaphorical imagery all the time because it bypasses conscious defenses and speaks directly to the subconscious. Your subconscious also thinks in terms of stories and narratives. It's constantly trying to make sense of experiences by fitting them into stories. This is why humans have been telling stories since we could speak. Stories are how we understand the world, transmit values, and make meaning. Your life isn't just a series of events. It's a story your subconscious has woven together, complete with themes, character arcs, and meaning. The stories you tell about yourself and your life shape your subconscious identity and expectations. If your story is, "I'm unlucky," or "bad things always happen to me," your subconscious will look for evidence supporting that narrative. If your story is, "I'm resourceful," or "I grow through challenges," your subconscious will highlight different aspects of your experience. You have the power to change your story, but it requires conscious effort because your subconscious has momentum. It wants to maintain narrative consistency. This is why change is hard, not just because habits are ingrained, but because change requires rewriting your story, and your subconscious resists plot holes and contradictions. But stories do change. People have transformative experiences, turning points, moments where the narrative shifts. Sometimes this happens through crisis, something so significant that the old story no longer fits. Sometimes it happens through gradual accumulation of new experiences that don't match the old narrative. And sometimes it happens through conscious, deliberate rewriting, therapy, self-reflection, intentional personal development. Let me tell you about the concept of a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset, coined by psychologist Carol Dweck. These are essentially subconscious stories about your abilities. A fixed mindset says talents and intelligence are static. You either have them or you don't. A growth mindset says abilities can be developed through effort and learning. These aren't just conscious beliefs. They're subconscious frameworks that affect how you approach challenges. With a fixed mindset, your subconscious interprets failure as evidence that you lack ability, so it makes you want to give up to protect your ego. With a growth mindset, your subconscious interprets failure as information, as part of the learning process, so it keeps you engaged. The fascinating thing is, you can shift from fixed to growth mindset by changing the story you tell about failure and ability. When you praise effort and strategy rather than innate talent, when you view challenges as opportunities rather than threats, you're reprogramming your subconscious framework. This has been shown to improve performance, resilience, and well-being. Your subconscious is also deeply affected by rituals and routines. Humans have used rituals across all cultures and time periods because they communicate with the subconscious in powerful ways. A ritual is a symbolic action that carries meaning beyond its practical function. When you light a candle before meditation, you're signaling to your subconscious that it's time to shift states. When you have a pre-performance routine, you're cueing your subconscious to enter performance mode. Athletes are superstitious for this reason. They know consciously that wearing lucky socks doesn't actually affect their performance, but the ritual gives their subconscious a sense of control and preparation. It's a way of communicating with the part of your mind that doesn't speak in logic and reason. You probably have rituals you don't even recognize as such. Your morning coffee routine, the way you settle into bed at night, how you prepare for important events. These are all ways of communicating with your subconscious, creating states and expectations. Being intentional about these rituals can make them more effective. Creating transition rituals is particularly powerful. A ritual that signals the end of work and the start of personal time. A ritual that helps you shift from waking consciousness to sleep. These rituals help your subconscious switch gears, which can improve both productivity and rest. There's also something powerful about ceremony for marking significant life transitions. Graduations, weddings, funerals, these ceremonies help your subconscious process major changes. Without some kind of ritual acknowledgement, your subconscious might struggle to integrate the change. This is why people create personal ceremonies sometimes, like burning old journals or planting trees. They're giving their subconscious a clear symbolic marker of transformation. Now let's talk about collective subconscious, because your individual subconscious doesn't exist in isolation. Carl Jung talked about the collective unconscious, patterns and archetypes shared across humanity. Whether or not you buy into Jung's full theory, it's clear that humans share common subconscious responses to certain things. Babies are instinctively afraid of falling and loud noises. They don't need to learn these fears. They're hardwired. Across cultures, people respond similarly to certain facial expressions. These are shared subconscious programs, evolved over millions of years, that we all carry. But there are also culturally specific subconscious patterns, the things that trigger shame or pride, the associations between colors and emotions, the subconscious rules for social interaction. These vary by culture. Your subconscious has been programmed by your cultural context in ways you're probably not aware of. This is why traveling or interacting with different cultures can be so uncomfortable. Your subconscious is encountering rules and patterns that conflict with what it knows. Personal space, eye contact, tone of voice. These are all regulated by subconscious cultural programming. When that programming doesn't match, it creates friction. But exposure to different cultures can also expand your subconscious flexibility. You learn that there are multiple valid ways to exist, multiple frameworks for understanding reality. This can loosen the grip of your own cultural programming, giving you more conscious choice in how you respond to situations. There's also family subconscious, patterns passed down through generations. The way your parents handled conflict probably shapes how you handle conflict, often without conscious awareness. The attitudes toward money, success, emotion, relationships that were modeled for you in childhood. These become subconscious templates. Sometimes these patterns are healthy and useful. Sometimes they're dysfunctional, and you find yourself repeating behaviors you swore you'd never repeat. Breaking generational patterns requires bringing them into conscious awareness and deliberately choosing different responses. You're not just changing your own subconscious, you're potentially changing the pattern for future generations. Let me tell you about epigenetics, which has shown that experiences can actually affect gene expression in ways that get passed down to offspring. Stress, trauma, and even learning can create molecular changes that are heritable. This means your subconscious is not just shaped by your own experiences. It's carrying imprints from your ancestors' experiences. This isn't mystical, it's biology. Studies on Holocaust survivors found that their children and even grandchildren show specific stress responses and trauma markers, even if they never experienced trauma themselves. The subconscious effects of severe stress were literally passed down through genetic mechanisms. This is both sobering and empowering. Sobering because it means trauma's effects can span generations. Empowering because it means healing can too. When you do the work to heal your own subconscious patterns, you're not just helping yourself. You're potentially breaking cycles that have affected your family for generations. You're creating new patterns that can be passed forward. This gives personal growth work a significance beyond just individual benefit. Let's talk about the shadow, another concept from Jung. This is the part of your subconscious that contains aspects of yourself you've rejected or denied. Qualities you judge as bad or unacceptable get pushed into the shadow, but they don't disappear. They continue to influence you from the subconscious, often in problematic ways. The things that trigger intense reactions in other people are often shadow aspects, qualities you're unwilling to acknowledge in yourself, so you're hypersensitive to them in others. If you're intensely bothered by arrogance, it might be because you're suppressing your own desire for recognition. If you're triggered by emotional displays, it might be because you've suppressed your own emotions. Integrating your shadow doesn't mean acting on every impulse or becoming the things you've rejected. It means acknowledging these aspects exist within you, accepting your full humanity, which paradoxically gives you more conscious choice in how you behave. When you deny shadow aspects, they leak out in unconscious ways. When you accept them, they lose their power to control you from the subconscious. This is deep psychological work that often requires professional help, but the principle is important. Your subconscious contains everything, including the parts you'd rather not admit are there. The more you can bring into conscious awareness, the less those hidden aspects control you. There's also a concept called projection, where you subconsciously attribute your own feelings or qualities to other people. If you're angry but haven't acknowledged it, you might perceive others as angry at you. If you're attracted to someone but it conflicts with your self-image, you might convince yourself they're attracted to you instead. Projection is a defense mechanism, a way your subconscious protects you from uncomfortable truths. But it distorts your perception of reality and can create a lot of unnecessary conflict in relationships. Learning to recognize when you're projecting, asking yourself, Is this really about them, or is it about me? Can dramatically improve self-awareness and relationships. Now let's talk about something practical: sleep hygiene and how it affects your subconscious. Since your subconscious is so active during sleep, the quality of your sleep directly impacts its ability to process, integrate, and heal. When you're sleep deprived, your subconscious doesn't get the processing time it needs, which means emotions don't get regulated, memories don't get consolidated, and problems don't get solved. Chronic sleep deprivation literally impairs subconscious functioning. Your emotional regulation suffers, making you more reactive. Your decision-making suffers because your subconscious intuition is less reliable. Your creativity suffers because your brain isn't getting the downtime it needs to make novel connections. Creating good sleep conditions isn't just about feeling rested. It's about giving your subconscious the environment it needs to do its work. This means consistent sleep schedules, dark and cool rooms, limiting blue light exposure before bed, and creating pre-sleep rituals that signal to your subconscious it's time to wind down. What you think about as you fall asleep also matters. Your subconscious is particularly receptive during that twilight state between waking and sleeping. Falling asleep while ruminating on problems or scrolling through social media is feeding your subconscious anxiety and scattered information. Falling asleep while practicing gratitude or visualizing positive outcomes is giving it different programming to work with overnight. Some people use this receptive state deliberately, repeating affirmations or visualizations as they drift off, essentially programming their subconscious directly. Whether this is more effective than doing the same practices while fully awake is debatable, but the principle is sound. Your subconscious is listening during that threshold state. Dreams are your most direct window into your subconscious, but they're notoriously difficult to interpret. Despite what dream dictionaries will tell you, there's no universal symbolism. Your subconscious uses personal symbols based on your own experiences and associations. Water might mean one thing to you, and something completely different to someone else. That said, paying attention to recurring themes, emotions, and symbols in your dreams can give you insights into subconscious concerns and patterns. If you keep dreaming about being chased, your subconscious might be working through feelings of anxiety or avoidance. If you dream about being unprepared for tests years after finishing school, your subconscious might be processing current situations where you feel underprepared. Keeping a dream journal can help you spot these patterns. Write down your dreams immediately upon waking, before your conscious mind has a chance to edit or rationalize them. Over time, you'll start seeing themes and gaining insight into what your subconscious is processing. Some people practice lucid dreaming specifically to interact with their subconscious more directly. In a lucid dream, you know you're dreaming and can make choices within the dream. This can be used for all sorts of things: facing fears, practicing skills, asking questions of your subconscious, and receiving answers in the form of dream imagery. The technique for inducing lucid dreams involves reality checks, regularly questioning whether you're dreaming while awake, which eventually carries over into dreams. When you realize you're dreaming, the dream continues, but you have awareness and agency within it. It takes practice, but many people find it a powerful tool for subconscious exploration. Now let's talk about altered states of consciousness and how they provide access to different aspects of your subconscious. Meditation, hypnosis, psychedelic experiences, even intense exercise. These all shift brain states in ways that change the relationship between conscious and subconscious processing. In meditation, you're quieting the conscious mind's constant chatter, which allows subconscious material to surface. Insights, emotions, memories can arise that are usually drowned out by conscious thought. This is why meditation can be both healing and occasionally uncomfortable. You're encountering material your conscious mind usually keeps at bay. Hypnosis creates a similar state of heightened suggestibility where the conscious mind's critical filter is relaxed. This isn't about losing control or being made to do things against your will. It's about accessing and communicating with the subconscious more directly. Therapeutic hypnosis can be effective for things like phobias, habits, and trauma, precisely because it works with the subconscious where these patterns are stored. Psychedelics are controversial, but research has shown they can create powerful shifts in subconscious patterns. They seem to temporarily disrupt default modes of thinking, allowing the brain to form new connections and see patterns from fresh perspectives. People report insights into long-standing issues, dissolution of rigid beliefs, and emotional breakthroughs. The subconscious material that's usually filtered out becomes available to conscious awareness. I'm not advocating for psychedelic use. That's a personal decision with legal and safety considerations. But the research is compelling and shows that under the right conditions, these substances can facilitate deep subconscious work that might take years to achieve through conventional therapy. The key phrase is, under the right conditions. Setting, and integration support matter enormously. Intense physical experiences can also create altered states. Runner's high, the flow state in sports, even the endorphin rush from cold exposure. These shift brain chemistry in ways that affect conscious-subconscious interaction. Many people report their clearest insights and most creative ideas coming during or after intense workouts. There's something about pushing your body that quiets the analytical mind and lets the subconscious have more voice. This is probably evolutionary. When you're running from danger or hunting prey, you need subconscious reflexes and intuition, not conscious analysis. Voluntary physical challenge taps into those same states. Breathwork practices like holotropic breathwork or Wim Hof method create altered states through deliberate manipulation of oxygen and carbon dioxide levels. People report profound emotional releases and insights from these practices. You're essentially using physiology to shift consciousness and access subconscious material. The point isn't that you need to do any of these specific practices. It's that your subconscious isn't static or inaccessible. There are many doors in, many ways to work with it consciously. The key is finding approaches that resonate with you and being consistent with them. Let's talk about creativity and how it flows from the subconscious. All creative work involves a dance between conscious craft and subconscious inspiration. The best ideas don't come from grinding consciously. They bubble up from the subconscious when you're not forcing them. This is why so many artists and writers have rituals and routines. They're not just being quirky, they're creating conditions that allow their subconscious to contribute. Stephen King writes every morning at the same time, in the same place. His subconscious knows this is creative time and shows up ready to generate ideas. But you also need input. Your subconscious can only recombine what you fed it. Creative people are often voracious consumers, reading widely, experiencing art, having conversations, traveling. They're filling their subconscious database with raw material. Then they step back and let the subconscious make unexpected connections. There's a famous 4-stage model of creativity: preparation, incubation, illumination, and verification. Preparation is conscious work, researching, planning, attempting solutions. Incubation is stepping away and letting your subconscious work on it. Illumination is when the solution suddenly appears, often when you're doing something completely unrelated. Verification is consciously testing and refining the idea. Most people only focus on preparation and verification, the conscious stages. But incubation is crucial. This is when your subconscious is making connections your conscious mind can't see. If you never step away from a problem, if you never give your subconscious processing time, you're missing out on this stage of creative problem solving. This applies to all kinds of problems, not just artistic creativity. Business challenges, relationship issues, life decisions, they all benefit from subconscious processing time. Sometimes the best thing you can do with a difficult problem is stop consciously thinking about it for a while. Not to avoid it, but to let your subconscious work on it in the background. There's also something called the beginner's mind in Zen Buddhism. Approaching things with openness and lack of preconception, the way a beginner would. This is actually about quieting the subconscious patterns and assumptions that automatically kick in when you're experienced. Expertise is valuable, but it can also create blind spots. Your subconscious knows how things are supposed to be done, which can prevent you from seeing novel solutions. Innovation often comes from people who aren't experts in a field, precisely because they don't have those subconscious constraints. They don't know what's impossible, so they try things experts wouldn't consider. This is why cross-disciplinary thinking is so powerful. You're bringing subconscious patterns from one domain into another, where they create fresh perspectives. You can cultivate this by deliberately exposing yourself to unfamiliar domains. Read outside your field. Talk to people with different backgrounds. Visit new places. You're not just gathering information consciously. You're giving your subconscious new patterns to play with, new possibilities to consider. Let's discuss intuition more deeply because it's one of the most practical applications of subconscious wisdom. Your intuition is essentially your subconscious doing rapid pattern recognition based on vast amounts of stored experience. It's not mystical or irrational. It's actually your brain processing information faster than consciousness can follow. The challenge is that intuition and anxiety can feel similar. Both are gut feelings. Both create physical sensations. How do you tell the difference? Generally, intuition feels clear and calm, even if it's warning you about something. Anxiety feels noisy and agitated. Intuition moves you toward action. Anxiety creates paralysis or scattered reaction. But this isn't foolproof. Your intuition is only as good as the data it's working with. If your experiences have taught your subconscious incorrect patterns, your intuition will be off. This is why diverse experience matters. The more perspectives and situations you've encountered, the more accurate your subconscious pattern recognition becomes. There's also the distinction between intuition and bias. Both are subconscious, both influence decisions, but they're different. Intuition is based on relevant pattern recognition, a firefighter sensing danger based on years of experience with fire behavior. Bias is based on irrelevant pattern recognition, assuming someone is untrustworthy because they remind you of someone who hurt you once. Learning to trust your intuition while questioning your biases is one of the most important skills you can develop. It requires self-awareness, knowing your weak spots, the areas where your subconscious patterns might be leading you astray. It requires humility, being willing to be wrong and update your models. And it requires testing, acting on your intuition and seeing whether it proves reliable over time. Some people develop their intuition through practices like meditation or somatic awareness. You're learning to tune into subtle body sensations and subconscious signals that usually get drowned out by conscious thought and emotion. Your body often knows things before your conscious mind catches up. Tension in your chest, a pit in your stomach, a sense of expansion or contraction. These are your subconscious communicating through physical sensation. Learning to pause and check in with your body before making decisions can significantly improve decision quality. You're not replacing logic with feeling. You're adding subconscious wisdom to conscious analysis. The best decisions typically integrate both logical analysis and intuitive sense. Let me tell you about something called thin slicing, popularized by Malcolm Gladwell. This is your ability to make accurate judgments based on very limited information, a thin slice of experience. Your subconscious picks up on patterns and signals so quickly that you can form reliable impressions in seconds. Studies have shown that people can accurately assess teacher effectiveness from just a few seconds of silent video. They can predict relationship outcomes from brief observations of couples interacting. This isn't magic. It's subconscious pattern recognition working at high speed. But thin slicing can also lead you astray when it's based on stereotypes rather than genuine expertise. The key is domain relevance. A doctor's snap diagnosis based on years of seeing patients? Probably reliable. Your instant negative impression of someone based on how they look? Probably bias. This is why feedback and reflection are so important. When you make intuitive judgments, pay attention to whether they prove accurate. Your subconscious learns from this feedback, gradually calibrating its pattern recognition. Over time, in domains where you have genuine expertise and unbiased experience, your intuition becomes increasingly reliable. Now, let's talk about something crucial: the role of rest and recovery in subconscious functioning. Your subconscious needs downtime, just like your body needs rest after exercise. When you push constantly without breaks, your subconscious becomes less effective. You lose creativity, emotional regulation, and good judgment. This is why vacations aren't just nice to have, they're necessary for optimal functioning. Stepping completely away from work and routine gives your subconscious space to process everything that's accumulated. People often return from vacation with solutions to problems they'd been stuck on, precisely because they gave their subconscious the time and space it needed. But you don't have to wait for vacation. Daily recovery practices matter. Taking real breaks during the workday, not just switching from one screen to another. getting outside, moving your body, having conversations that aren't about work. These activities aren't wasted time. They're when your subconscious does some of its best work. There's also the concept of strategic renewal, deliberately alternating between periods of intense focus and periods of recovery. Work in focused sprints, then take real breaks. Tackle challenging projects, then shift to easier tasks. Push hard, then rest. Your conscious mind might feel like more time equals more productivity, but your subconscious works differently. It needs oscillation between engagement and recovery. Sleep is the ultimate recovery practice for your subconscious. Everything we've discussed, memory consolidation, emotional processing, creative problem solving, learning, happens primarily during sleep. Sacrificing sleep for productivity is incredibly counterproductive because you're undermining the very processes that make productivity possible. But quality matters as much as quantity. 8 hours of fragmented, poor quality sleep isn't the same as 8 hours of deep, restorative sleep. Your subconscious needs to move through all the sleep stages, particularly deep sleep and REM sleep, to do its work effectively. This means addressing whatever's disrupting your sleep. Sleep apnea, chronic pain, anxiety, poor sleep environment. These aren't just comfort issues. They're directly impairing your subconscious functioning. If you're not sleeping well, everything else we've talked about becomes harder. Your subconscious can't regulate emotions, process memories, solve problems, or learn effectively without quality sleep. Let's talk about stress and its impact on the subconscious. Acute stress can actually enhance subconscious functioning in the short term. You become hyper-alert, intuitive, capable of rapid decisions. This is the fight or flight response working as designed. But chronic stress does the opposite. It impairs subconscious processing, locks you into rigid patterns, and reduces your ability to learn and adapt. When you're chronically stressed, your subconscious is stuck in threat mode. It's constantly scanning for danger, interpreting ambiguous situations negatively, preparing for the worst. This made sense for our ancestors facing physical dangers, but it's maladaptive for modern life, where most threats are social or psychological rather than physical. The problem is, your subconscious doesn't know the difference between physical and psychological threats. Whether you're being chased by a predator or worried about a work presentation, your subconscious triggers similar stress responses. And when those responses are activated constantly, they cause real damage to your health, your relationships, your decision-making, your well-being. Managing stress isn't just about feeling better. It's about allowing your subconscious to function optimally. Practices like meditation, exercise, time in nature, social connection, these aren't luxuries or stress management techniques. They're essential for subconscious health. They shift your nervous system out of threat mode and into a state where your subconscious can do its best work. There's a concept in neuroscience called neuroplasticity that we touched on earlier, but it's worth emphasizing. Your brain continues changing throughout your life. The subconscious patterns you have now aren't fixed. Every experience, every thought, every action is physically changing your brain structure. This means change is always possible. But it also means you need to be intentional about what you're repeatedly doing and thinking, because that's what gets hardwired. If you repeatedly practice anxiety, you're strengthening anxiety pathways. If you repeatedly practice gratitude, you're strengthening gratitude pathways. Your subconscious is being sculpted by your habits, mental, emotional, and behavioral. This is actually hopeful. It means you're not stuck with the subconscious programming you inherited or developed in childhood. Yes, early programming is powerful and persistent, but it's not immutable. With consistent effort, you can rewire your subconscious at any age. The key is consistency over time. One yoga session won't change your stress response, but daily practice over months or years will literally change your brain structure. One meditation session won't transform your attention span, but regular practice will thicken areas of your brain associated with focus and awareness. You're training your subconscious through repetition. This is why small, sustainable changes are often more effective than dramatic overhauls. You're not trying to force change through willpower. You're gradually teaching your subconscious new patterns through consistent experience. Over time, these new patterns become automatic, requiring less conscious effort to maintain. Let's talk about the role of community and relationships in shaping your subconscious. You don't exist in isolation. Your subconscious is constantly being influenced by the people around you. We talked about emotional contagion earlier, but it goes deeper than that. The people you spend time with are programming your subconscious through constant, subtle influence. If you're surrounded by people who complain constantly, your subconscious learns to see the world through that lens. If you're surrounded by people who approach challenges with optimism and problem solving, your subconscious learns that pattern instead. This isn't about blaming your circumstances or the people around you. It's about recognizing that you're being shaped by your social environment. This is why Jim Rohn said, you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Your subconscious is absorbing their attitudes, beliefs, and behaviors. Over time, you converge toward the group norm, often without conscious awareness of it happening. The implication is that if you want to change your subconscious patterns, changing your social environment can be powerful. Surround yourself with people who embody the patterns you're trying to develop. Join communities that support your goals. Find mentors who model the thinking and behavior you aspire to. Your subconscious learns through observation and modeling as much as through direct experience. But this isn't just about personal gain. As you do your own subconscious work, you become someone who influences others positively. You become a source of healthy patterns rather than toxic ones. The work you do on yourself ripples out to affect everyone you interact with. This is how cultures shift, one person at a time doing the work to change their subconscious pattern. There's something called mirror neurons that are relevant here. These are neurons that fire both when you perform an action and when you observe someone else performing it. Your subconscious is essentially simulating other people's experiences, which is the basis of empathy and social learning. When you watch someone succeed, your subconscious is practicing success. When you watch someone fail, you're learning from their mistakes without having to make them yourself. This is why mentorship and modeling are so powerful. You're not just getting advice and information. Your subconscious is learning at a deeper level by observing someone who's further along the path. Their patterns become available to your subconscious in a way that reading about success in a book never quite achieves. But mirror neurons also mean you're affected by negative modeling. If you're constantly consuming content showing violence, dysfunction, or toxicity, your subconscious is simulating those experiences. This doesn't mean you'll necessarily act them out, but it's shaping your subconscious understanding of what's normal and possible. This is where media consumption becomes important. What are you feeding your subconscious? Not just in terms of explicit messages, but in terms of the patterns, emotions, and behaviors you're repeatedly exposing it to? Your subconscious doesn't fully distinguish between observed and experienced, remember? So the content you consume is, in a sense, becoming part of your experience. I'm not suggesting you only consume positive content or avoid all difficult material. Engaging with challenging content, understanding different perspectives, confronting hard truths, these are important. But being conscious of the overall diet your subconscious is receiving matters. Balance is key. Now let's talk about purpose and meaning, because your subconscious needs a sense of direction. When you have clear values and a sense of purpose, your subconscious has a framework for making decisions and prioritizing. When you lack this clarity, your subconscious doesn't know what to optimize for, leading to scattered effort and internal conflict. This is why people who have a strong sense of purpose often accomplish remarkable things. It's not just conscious motivation. Their subconscious is aligned behind a clear direction. Decisions become easier because the subconscious has a filter for what matters. Obstacles become more manageable because the subconscious maintains focus on what's important. But purpose doesn't mean you need some grand life mission. It can be as simple as living according to your values, contributing to your community, being a good parent or friend. What matters is that your subconscious has a coherent sense of what you're about, what you're moving toward. Without this, you're more vulnerable to being pulled in whatever direction external influences push you. Your subconscious doesn't have an internal compass, so it relies on external signals. What other people want from you, what society says you should do, what will bring immediate reward. This leads to that feeling of living someone else's life, of being successful by external measures but feeling empty inside. Finding purpose is partly conscious work, reflecting on values, exploring what matters to you, making intentional choices. But it's also about listening to your subconscious. What activities make you lose track of time? What issues make you angry or passionate? What would you do if you didn't have to worry about money or approval? Your subconscious knows what matters to you, but you have to pay attention to its signals. Let's talk about forgiveness and its role in subconscious healing. When you hold on to resentment and anger, it's like a program running in the background of your subconscious, using up resources and affecting everything you do. Your subconscious keeps replaying the hurt, preparing for future betrayal, maintaining defensive postures that might have been necessary in the past, but that limit you now. Forgiveness isn't about condoning what happened or reconciling with people who hurt you. It's about releasing your subconscious from constantly processing old wounds. It's freeing up that mental and emotional energy for more productive uses. This is why people talk about forgiveness being a gift you give yourself. It's your subconscious you're liberating, not the other person. This is hard work. Your subconscious doesn't just let go because you consciously decide to forgive. You have to process the emotions, grieve what was lost, find meaning in the experience. Sometimes this requires therapy or other professional support. But the work is worth it because carrying unresolved hurt is like carrying a heavy backpack everywhere you go. You can function, but you're expending energy that could be used for other things. The same goes for guilt and shame you're carrying. These emotions have a purpose. They're your subconscious trying to get you to change behavior that violated your values. But once you've learned the lesson and made amends where possible, continuing to carry guilt and shame is counterproductive. Your subconscious needs to update its assessment. Yes, you made a mistake. You learned from it. You're working to do better. The error has been processed. Move forward. This is part of self-compassion, which is really about having a healthy relationship with your subconscious. Treating yourself with the same kindness you'd offer a good friend. When you make mistakes, your subconscious is watching how you respond. If you beat yourself up mercilessly, you're teaching your subconscious that mistakes are catastrophic, which makes you risk-averse and fearful. If you respond with understanding and focus on learning, you're teaching your subconscious that mistakes are part of growth. Let's discuss the concept of flow state in more depth. Flow is when you're completely absorbed in an activity, losing track of time, performing at your peak. This is your conscious and subconscious minds working in perfect harmony. Your conscious mind sets the intention and monitors progress, but your subconscious is doing the actual work, effortlessly executing complex skills. Flow happens when the challenge level matches your skill level. Too easy and you're bored. Your subconscious isn't engaged. Too hard and you're anxious. Your conscious mind is interfering because the task exceeds your subconscious competence. But right at the edge of your abilities, in that sweet spot, your subconscious can take over and you enter flow. This is one of the most enjoyable and productive states you can experience. People report flow states as among the best moments of their lives. Not passive pleasure, but the deep satisfaction of complete engagement. Your subconscious is designed for this. It wants to be challenged and engaged. The modern world often denies us this through either mind-numbing routine or overwhelming complexity. Finding activities that regularly produce flow states is important for well-being. It might be work, hobbies, sports, creative pursuits. What matters is that you're regularly giving your subconscious the opportunity to stretch and perform. This is actually what makes work fulfilling. Not the rewards or recognition, but the experience of your subconscious operating at high levels. You can facilitate flow by minimizing distractions, setting clear goals, and choosing appropriately challenging tasks. Your subconscious needs uninterrupted time to build momentum. Every interruption pulls you back into conscious processing, breaking the flow state. This is why deep work, extended periods of focused attention, is so valuable. You're giving your subconscious space to get into rhythm. Now let us talk about something that affects everyone, but is rarely discussed: the subconscious processing that happens around significant life transitions. Birth, death, marriage, divorce, career changes, moves. These major transitions require extensive subconscious adjustment. Your whole model of reality has to update, and this takes time and energy. This is why life transitions are so exhausting, even when they're positive. Your conscious mind might be excited about a new job or relationship, but your subconscious is working overtime to integrate this major change. Old patterns don't fit anymore. New patterns haven't formed yet. You're in a state of flux, which is inherently uncomfortable. Being patient with yourself during transitions is important. Expect that you won't be at your best. Your subconscious is using resources for adjustment that would normally be available for other things. This is why people often feel foggy or emotional during major life changes. It's not weakness. It's your subconscious doing necessary processing work. Rituals and ceremonies help here by giving your subconscious clear markers of transition. Without these markers, your subconscious might struggle to fully process that things have changed. This is why people create personal rituals around life changes, cleaning out a space after a breakup, having a ceremony for a career transition, marking milestones with celebrations. You're helping your subconscious integrate the change. Let's talk about aging and how the relationship between conscious and subconscious shifts over time. There's a stereotype that you become more rigid as you age, more stuck in your ways. This can happen, but it's not inevitable. What's happening is, your subconscious has accumulated decades of patterns and experiences. These patterns are deeply grooved, making change require more effort. But older adults also have something valuable: accumulated wisdom, which is really sophisticated subconscious pattern recognition. An experienced person can see patterns and make connections that younger people miss. Their subconscious database is richer, their intuition more refined. This is why cultures traditionally revered elders. They held irreplaceable subconscious knowledge. The key to healthy aging seems to be maintaining neuroplasticity, continuing to learn, staying socially engaged, having novel experiences. You're keeping your subconscious flexible, continuing to form new patterns rather than just running old ones. People who stay curious and open throughout life maintain cognitive function much better than those who become rigid and routine-bound. There's also something interesting about older adults reporting greater life satisfaction and emotional stability. This seems to be partly because the subconscious becomes better at emotional regulation with experience. You've encountered more situations, processed more emotions, learned better coping strategies. Your subconscious handles challenges with more grace and less reactivity. But this only happens if you've been doing the work throughout your life. If you've been avoiding difficult emotions and experiences, they don't magically resolve with age. They accumulate. Older adults who report unhappiness often have decades of unprocessed subconscious material. This is why midlife crises happen. People reach a point where their subconscious can no longer maintain the patterns they've been living by. Something has to change. Now let's talk about collective trauma and healing, because subconscious patterns exist at community and cultural levels too. When a group experiences significant trauma, war, oppression, disaster, it affects the subconscious of that entire generation and gets passed down to subsequent generations. We see this in studies of communities that have experienced genocide or slavery. The trauma echoes through generations in behavior patterns, stress responses, and worldviews. Healing collective trauma requires collective work. It's not enough for individuals to process their personal experiences. Communities need rituals, truth-telling, acknowledgement, and often some form of justice or repair. The collective subconscious needs to process what happened and integrate it in a way that allows moving forward without forgetting or repeating history. This is part of why historical memory matters. When societies try to move on without acknowledging past trauma, the subconscious patterns don't resolve. They continue affecting behavior and relationships in hidden ways. Confronting painful history isn't about dwelling in the past. It's about allowing the collective subconscious to process and heal, so it stops unconsciously perpetuating old patterns. On a smaller scale, families and organizations have collective subconscious patterns too. Family systems theory looks at how dysfunction gets passed down through generations, how family roles and dynamics become self-perpetuating. Organizations develop cultures, unwritten rules, and shared assumptions that exist in the collective subconscious of everyone in the organization. Changing these collective patterns is challenging because everyone's individual subconscious is reinforcing everyone else's. You're not just changing your own mind. You're working against a system that's pushing you to conform to existing patterns. This is why organizational and cultural change is so difficult, even when everyone consciously agrees change is needed. The collective subconscious maintains the status quo, but change is possible. It usually starts with individuals becoming aware of the patterns and consciously choosing differently. As more people do this, the collective pattern starts to shift. Eventually, a tipping point is reached, and the new pattern becomes the norm. Your individual subconscious work contributes to collective transformation. Let's talk about technology and the future of our relationship with the subconscious. We're developing tools that can read and potentially influence subconscious processes. Brain-computer interfaces, neurofeedback, AI that can predict behavior. These technologies raise profound questions about privacy, autonomy, and what it means to be human. If your subconscious responses can be read and influenced externally, where does that leave free will? If AI systems can predict your behavior better than you can, based on subconscious patterns you're not aware of, who's really in control? These aren't just philosophical questions anymore. They have practical implications for how these technologies should be developed and regulated. On one hand, these tools could help people with subconscious patterns they want to change. Neurofeedback can help with anxiety, trauma, attention issues. Brain-computer interfaces might allow people with paralysis to control devices. Understanding subconscious bias better could help address discrimination. There's real potential for good here. On the other hand, these tools could be used to manipulate and control. Advertising already targets your subconscious. What happens when it has direct access to your neural patterns? Governments and corporations having insight into your subconscious thoughts and tendencies is dystopian. We need to think carefully about boundaries and protections as these technologies develop. But even without futuristic technology, the principles we've been discussing matter more than ever. In a world of information overload and constant manipulation attempts, understanding how your subconscious works is self-defense. Knowing how you're being influenced helps you make more conscious choices. Doing the work to align your conscious intentions with subconscious patterns gives you greater agency. This is ultimately about freedom, not freedom from your subconscious. That's impossible and undesirable, but freedom through understanding it. When you're aware of how your subconscious works, how it's been programmed, how it influences you, you're less controlled by it. You can work with it rather than being at its mercy. Your subconscious will always be there, processing millions of pieces of information, running automatic programs, making rapid assessments. But you can influence what programs are running. You can update patterns that aren't serving you. You can create conditions that allow your subconscious to function optimally. This is what personal growth and development really are, consciously shaping your subconscious. Let me tell you about the concept of psychological flexibility, which is really about having a healthy relationship with your subconscious. It's not about controlling your thoughts and feelings. That's impossible and counterproductive. It's about being aware of them without being controlled by them. Your subconscious generates thoughts and emotions constantly. Psychological flexibility is noticing them, understanding where they're coming from, and choosing how to respond. This is different from positive thinking or trying to force yourself to feel differently. It's about acceptance. Your subconscious is doing what it's programmed to do. You don't have to like or agree with every thought and feeling that arises, but fighting them just creates more problems. The more you try to suppress subconscious material, the more power it has over you. The alternative is to observe your subconscious processes with curiosity rather than judgment. Oh, there's my anxiety about failing. There's my habitual self-criticism. There's my tendency to catastrophize. You're not identifying with these patterns, you're noticing them. This creates space between the stimulus and your response. You're less reactive, more able to choose actions aligned with your values. This observing stance is what meditation teaches. You watch thoughts arise and pass without getting caught up in them. You notice emotions in your body without being overwhelmed by them. Over time, this changes your relationship with your subconscious. You realize you're not your thoughts, you're the awareness that observes thoughts. This distinction is profound and liberating. Your subconscious will keep producing thoughts aligned with its programming, but you don't have to believe or act on every thought. You can acknowledge anxiety about public speaking without avoiding all public speaking opportunities. You can notice the craving for unhealthy food without automatically eating it. There's a space between subconscious impulse and conscious choice, and that's where your freedom lives. Expanding that space is what practices like mindfulness do. You're training yourself to pause, to observe, to choose. Initially, this requires conscious effort, but over time, the pause itself becomes automatic, a new subconscious pattern. You've taught your subconscious to flag impulses for conscious review, rather than automatically executing them. This is advanced work. It requires consistent practice and patience. Your subconscious has been running certain programs for years or decades. Those neural pathways are deep. Building new ones takes time, but it's absolutely possible. And the benefits are immense. Greater peace, better relationships, more aligned actions, deeper satisfaction with life. Let's talk about hope and its role in subconscious functioning. Hope isn't just a nice feeling. It's a subconscious orientation toward the future. When you are hopeful, your subconscious is generating possibilities, looking for opportunities, maintaining motivation even when things are difficult. When you're hopeless, your subconscious shuts down these processes. You stop seeing possibilities because your subconscious has concluded there aren't any. This is why cultivating hope is so important, especially during difficult times. It's not about naive optimism or denying reality. It's about keeping your subconscious engaged with possibility. You do this partly through conscious choice, focusing on what you can control, celebrating small wins, connecting with supportive people. But you also need to address the root causes of hopelessness. Often it comes from feeling powerless, which comes from repeated experiences where your actions didn't matter. This creates learned helplessness in your subconscious. The way out is through small, achievable actions that prove your agency. Every time you set a small goal and achieve it, you're teaching your subconscious that your actions matter. Hope is also contagious. Being around hopeful people affects your subconscious. Their orientation rubs off on you. This is why community matters so much during hard times. You're not just getting practical support. You're being held in a collective field of hope that supports your individual subconscious when it's struggling to maintain that orientation alone. Now let's talk about authenticity and the subconscious. When you're being authentic, living according to your true values, expressing your genuine self, there's an alignment between conscious and subconscious that feels profoundly right. When you're being inauthentic, performing a role, hiding your true feelings, living by others' expectations, you experience internal discord because your conscious presentation doesn't match your subconscious reality. This discord is exhausting. You're using conscious energy to maintain a facade, and your subconscious is constantly producing signals that something's wrong. This is why people who make major life changes toward greater authenticity often report feeling like they can breathe for the first time. They've stopped the exhausting work of subconscious suppression. But authenticity is tricky because your subconscious contains everything, including things you might not want to acknowledge or express. Being authentic doesn't mean acting on every impulse. It means being honest with yourself about what's there, then making conscious choices about what to express and how. Sometimes people confuse authenticity with lacking a filter, just saying and doing whatever they feel. But that's not authenticity. That's being controlled by subconscious impulses. True authenticity involves conscious awareness of your subconscious processes and deliberate choice about how to express your truth in ways that honor both yourself and others. This is where values come in. Your values are conscious commitments that help guide which aspects of your subconscious to express and how. You might feel angry, but if you value kindness, you express that anger in ways that don't harm others. You're being authentic about the feeling, but conscious about the expression. Let us talk about legacy and how your subconscious is already building your legacy whether you're aware of it or not. Every interaction, every choice, every habit is leaving traces in your own neural pathways, in the people around you, in the systems you're part of. Your subconscious is creating ripples that will continue after you're gone. This isn't meant to be morbid. It's meant to be empowering. You're already creating a legacy. The question is whether it's conscious and intentional or not. What do you want to leave behind? What patterns do you want to pass on versus break? What contribution do you want your life to have made? Your subconscious works on longer timelines than your conscious mind often considers. It's preparing for a future that extends beyond your individual life. This is why people are motivated to have children, to create art, to build institutions, to teach. Their subconscious is oriented towards something lasting, something that transcends individual mortality. But legacy isn't just about grand achievements. It's in the everyday. How you treat people, what you model for those around you, the small kindnesses that ripple outward. Your subconscious is encoding patterns that others absorb. You're influencing the collective subconscious of your community and culture through every action. Being conscious of this isn't about pressure to be perfect. It's about recognizing that your life matters, that your choices matter, that the work you do on your own subconscious contributes to something larger than yourself. This can be motivating when personal growth feels difficult. You're not just doing it for yourself, but for everyone your life touches. Let's talk about surrender and its place in working with the subconscious. There's a paradox here. On one hand, we've been discussing how to consciously influence your subconscious, how to change patterns, how to create different outcomes. This requires effort and intention. But there's also a place for surrender, for trusting your subconscious, for letting go of conscious control. Sometimes the best thing you can do is stop trying so hard. Your subconscious often knows things your conscious mind doesn't. It has access to information, patterns, and wisdom that consciousness can't reach. When you're stuck on a problem, sometimes the answer comes when you stop consciously working on it and trust your subconscious to deliver a solution. This is different from avoidance or passivity. It's active trust. You've done the conscious work, gathered information, considered options, clarified values. Now you step back and let your subconscious integrate everything and reveal the path forward. This is what sleeping on it really means. You're trusting the subconscious processing that happens when you're not trying to figure things out. Learning when to push and when to surrender is an art. Push too hard and you create resistance, both in yourself and in others. Your subconscious pushes back against forced change, but surrender too easily and you miss opportunities to influence and grow. The balance point is different for everyone and changes depending on the situation. Generally, push with intention setting and consistent practice. Surrender with timeline and attachment to specific outcomes. You can control your actions and attention. You can't control exactly how and when change happens. Your subconscious has its own pace and process. Trying to force faster results usually backfires. Now let's talk about gratitude and how it reprograms your subconscious. When you regularly practice gratitude, you're training your subconscious to notice what's good in your life. Remember, your subconscious is constantly filtering reality, deciding what to pay attention to. If it's trained to look for problems and threats, that's what you'll see. If it's trained to notice blessings and opportunities, your experience of life shifts dramatically. This isn't about toxic positivity or ignoring real problems. It's about balance. Yes, your subconscious needs to be aware of threats and challenges. But if that's all it focuses on, you end up in a negative spiral where everything looks bad because your subconscious filter is set to find bad things. Gratitude practice recalibrates the filter. You're deliberately directing your subconscious attention to positive aspects of your experience. Over time, this becomes automatic. Your subconscious starts noticing good things without conscious effort. Your baseline mood improves. Your stress decreases. Your relationships improve because you're noticing what people do right instead of only what they do wrong. The research on gratitude is compelling. Regular gratitude practice improves mental health, physical health, sleep quality, and relationship satisfaction. These aren't just correlation effects. Controlled studies show causation. Gratitude is actively changing your subconscious patterns in beneficial ways, but like everything, it requires consistency. A single gratitude list doesn't reprogram years of negative filtering, but daily practice over weeks and months creates lasting change. Your subconscious learns new patterns through repetition, and gratitude is one of the most beneficial patterns you can cultivate. Let's talk about acceptance, which is fundamental to working with your subconscious. Acceptance doesn't mean resignation or approval. It means acknowledging reality as it is before trying to change it. Your subconscious is what it is right now, the result of your entire history up to this point. Fighting against that reality creates suffering without creating change. Acceptance is saying, this is where I am. This is what my subconscious is doing right now. I don't have to like it, but I acknowledge it. From that place of clarity, you can make wise choices about what to work on and how. But without acceptance, you're in denial or resistance, which means you're not working with your actual subconscious. You're fighting a fantasy version of it. This applies to emotions especially. Your subconscious generates feelings based on its programming. If you're anxious, that's your subconscious doing its job as currently programmed. Fighting the anxiety, judging yourself for being anxious, trying to force yourself to feel differently, none of that works. It just adds a layer of suffering on top of the original anxiety. Acceptance is, I notice I'm feeling anxious. This is my subconscious responding to perceived threat based on past programming. I don't have to like it or act on it, but I can accept that it's here right now. From that place, you can breathe, ground yourself, and choose your response. You're working with your subconscious reality rather than against it. This is really what all the practices we've discussed are about. Developing a conscious, compassionate, collaborative relationship with your subconscious. Not trying to dominate or eliminate it, not being blindly controlled by it either, but understanding it, working with it, gradually shaping it while accepting where it is right now. Your subconscious is not your enemy. It's not something to be conquered or transcended. It's the foundation of your consciousness, the source of your capabilities, the repository of your experience. Treating it as an adversary creates internal war. Treating it as an ally creates integration and wholeness. Let's talk about vulnerability and its connection to subconscious healing. Vulnerability is scary because it requires dropping defenses that your subconscious has constructed to protect you. These defenses developed for good reasons. They helped you cope with painful experiences. But defenses that protected you in the past often limit you in the present. Opening up, being seen, risking rejection, these all trigger subconscious alarm bells. Your programming says vulnerability equals danger. And in some contexts, that's true. But in safe relationships, vulnerability is actually what creates connection and allows healing. When you share your true self and are accepted, your subconscious starts to update its threat assessment. This is why therapy can be so powerful. You're practicing vulnerability in a safe relationship, giving your subconscious repeated experiences of being truly seen and accepted anyway. Over time, this updates the deep programming that says you have to hide parts of yourself to be safe or acceptable. But vulnerability isn't just about relationships. It's about being honest with yourself. Acknowledging feelings, needs, and desires that your subconscious has learned are unacceptable. When you can be vulnerable with yourself, admitting fears, acknowledging longings, accepting your full humanity, you create internal safety that allows deeper healing. Brené Brown's research on vulnerability shows it's essential for belonging, creativity, and authentic living. But your subconscious doesn't know that. It just knows vulnerability feels risky. Consciously choosing vulnerability despite the discomfort is how you teach your subconscious that it's safe, that the reward is worth the risk. Now let's talk about joy and play, which are often undervalued in discussions of personal growth. Your subconscious needs joy. It needs play. These aren't just nice-to-haves. They're essential for optimal functioning. When your subconscious experiences joy, it releases neurochemicals that enhance learning, creativity, and resilience. Play is how your subconscious explores possibilities without risk. It's safe experimentation. Children learn through play because it engages their subconscious in a low-stakes way. Adults need this too, but we often forget to play, treating everything seriously and goal-oriented. When you play, whether through games, art, movement, or just goofing around, you're giving your subconscious freedom to experiment, to make unexpected connections, to discover new patterns. Some of your most creative insights will come during play because your conscious control is relaxed and your subconscious can explore freely. Joy also builds resilience. When your subconscious has regular experiences of joy, it maintains a more balanced perspective during difficult times. You know from experience that life isn't all suffering, which helps you maintain hope when things are hard. This is why cultivating joy isn't selfish or frivolous. It's building psychological resources you'll need. Let's talk about the relationship between body and subconscious mind, because they're far more interconnected than most people realize. Your subconscious doesn't just control your body, it is, in many ways, inseparable from it. Emotions aren't just mental events, they're physical states. Your subconscious uses your body to communicate with you. When you have a gut feeling, that's literally your enteric nervous system communicating. When you feel tension in your shoulders, that's your subconscious holding stress in your body. When your heart races before a presentation, that's your subconscious preparing for a perceived threat. Your body is constantly expressing subconscious processes. This means working with your body is working with your subconscious. Practices like yoga, tai chi, dance, or somatic therapy aren't just physical exercise. They're ways of processing and releasing subconscious material stored in your body. When you move in certain ways, emotions can surface and release. Old trauma can process through physical sensation rather than just talking. Your posture affects your subconscious state and vice versa. Stand confidently and your subconscious starts to feel more confident. Slump and your subconscious reinforces feelings of defeat. This is called embodied cognition. Your physical state and mental state are a feedback loop, constantly influencing each other. You can use this deliberately. When you're feeling anxious, changing your breathing pattern or posture can shift your subconscious state. When you're lacking energy, movement can wake up your subconscious and shift your mood. Your body is a tool for influencing your subconscious, and your subconscious is constantly expressed through your body. Let's talk about listening. To yourself, to others, to life. This is a skill that requires quieting your conscious mind enough to hear your subconscious. Most people spend so much time in conscious thought, planning and worrying, that they miss the quieter signals from their subconscious. Learning to listen to yourself means creating space for subconscious material to emerge. This might be through journaling, meditation, walking in nature, or just sitting quietly. You're not actively thinking. You're listening. Feelings arise, images appear, insights surface. This is your subconscious communicating, but you have to be still enough to hear it. Listening to others at a deep level means hearing beyond their words to what their subconscious is expressing. Tone, body language, what they're not saying. These communicate subconscious content. When you listen this way, you understand people at a deeper level and they feel truly heard, which is a profound gift. Listening to life means paying attention to patterns, synchronicities, and the way things unfold. Your conscious mind might have plans, but life often has other ideas. Your subconscious is picking up on what's actually emerging, as opposed to what you think should happen. Learning to notice and work with what's arising rather than forcing your agenda is a form of wisdom. This doesn't mean being passive. It means being responsive. You still set intentions and take action, but you're also paying attention to feedback, adjusting course, following opportunities that emerge. You're in dialogue with reality, rather than trying to impose your will on it. Your subconscious is much better at this responsive dance than your conscious mind, which wants to control and predict. Let's talk about death and how awareness of mortality affects the subconscious. This might seem morbid, but actually, death awareness can profoundly affect how you live. When your subconscious truly integrates that your time is limited, priorities shift. Things that seemed important fade. What actually matters comes into focus. This is why people who have near-death experiences often report major life changes afterward. Their subconscious has directly encountered mortality, and it recalibrates what matters. You don't need a near-death experience to access this wisdom, though. Regular reflection on mortality can provide similar benefits, helping your subconscious maintain perspective. Many spiritual traditions include contemplative practices around death for this reason. It's not about being morbid or fearful. It's about using death awareness to clarify values and appreciate life. When your subconscious holds the reality that nothing lasts forever, it helps you savor experiences, prioritize relationships, and take meaningful risks. This is also why legacy matters. Your subconscious wants your life to mean something that continues beyond your individual existence. This drives creativity, generativity, and contribution. You're not just living for yourself, you're part of something larger that will continue. This gives your subconscious a sense of purpose that transcends personal concerns. Now let's talk about mystery and the limits of understanding. We've discussed a lot about how the subconscious works, but there's still so much we don't know. Consciousness itself remains deeply mysterious. How subjective experience arises from neural activity, how awareness emerges, what exactly happens in different states of consciousness. We have theories but not definitive answers. This is actually important to acknowledge. Your subconscious contains depths that may never be fully illuminated. There's something humbling and even beautiful about this. You're not just a machine to be fully understood and optimized. There's mystery in you, complexity that exceeds complete comprehension. This means holding your understanding lightly. The models and frameworks we use to understand the subconscious are useful but incomplete. They're maps, not the territory. Don't mistake understanding the principles for having mastered your subconscious. It will always surprise you, always contain more than you can consciously grasp. Embracing mystery means being comfortable with not knowing, with uncertainty, with the fact that you can't control everything. Your conscious mind hates this. It wants certainty, predictability, control. But your subconscious is comfortable with mystery because it's part of mystery. It doesn't need everything explained and understood. Let us talk about transcendence and the possibility of your conscious and subconscious working together so harmoniously that something new emerges. This is what peak experiences feel like. Moments where you transcend your ordinary sense of self and experience profound connection, clarity, or peace. These experiences are subconscious and conscious, so aligned that the usual barriers dissolve. You're not thinking about yourself or monitoring your experience. You're just present, aware, connected. These moments are often described in spiritual terms, but they have a psychological basis in the temporary dissolution of the self-referential processing your brain usually does. You can't force these experiences, but you can create conditions that make them more likely. Being in nature, engaging in creative flow, meditation, sometimes psychedelics, being in love, these all can precipitate transcendent experiences. Your subconscious is capable of states far beyond ordinary consciousness, and occasionally you get glimpses of this. These experiences matter not just because they feel profound in the moment, but because they can permanently shift your subconscious understanding. After experiencing deep connection to something larger, your isolated individual self feels less solid, less separate. This can reduce anxiety, increase compassion, and shift priorities in lasting ways. But transcendent experiences aren't necessary for a good life. Many people never have dramatic mystical experiences, but live with deep presence, meaning, and connection. The everyday work of aligning conscious and subconscious, of living with awareness and intention, of being authentic and contributing, this is enough. As we come to the end of this exploration, let's return to where we started. Right now, your subconscious is processing these words, integrating them with everything else you know, deciding what's relevant, what to store, what to discard. And whether you remember specific facts or not, this exploration has affected your subconscious. You're thinking about yourself and your mind differently than you were before. The real question is, what will you do with this understanding? Because knowledge alone doesn't change anything. Your subconscious changes through experience, repetition, and emotion. Reading about these concepts is a start, but integration requires practice. Maybe you'll start paying more attention to your dreams, keeping a journal beside your bed. Maybe you'll begin a meditation practice, creating space to observe your subconscious processes. Maybe you'll examine your habits and start deliberately working to change patterns that aren't serving you. Maybe you'll be more conscious about what you consume, media, food, relationships, knowing it's all programming your subconscious. Maybe you'll start talking to yourself more kindly, recognizing that harsh self-criticism is programming your subconscious for shame and fear. Maybe you'll seek therapy to work on deep patterns you can't shift alone. Maybe you'll be more patient with yourself, understanding that change takes time because you're literally rewiring your brain. Whatever you do, remember this. Your subconscious isn't separate from you. It's not something you have. It's part of who you are. The work isn't about controlling or eliminating it. It's about understanding, accepting, and gradually shaping it while respecting its wisdom and limitations. Your subconscious has brought you this far in life. It's kept you alive, helped you learn and adapt, stored your experiences, and generated your intuitions. It's working right now, even as you drift toward sleep, processing the day, preparing for tomorrow, making connections you won't consciously recognize until later. Trust it, but also guide it. Listen to it, but also teach it. Accept it, but also influence it. This is the dance of conscious and subconscious, and learning this dance is what it means to grow, to mature, to become more fully yourself. Your subconscious mind is the most powerful tool you'll ever have access to. It's running the show in more ways than you probably realize, but that doesn't mean you're powerless. You can work with it, program it, create conditions for it to function optimally. You can clear out old patterns that no longer serve you and install new ones aligned with who you want to be. This is lifelong work. You never arrive at some final state where your subconscious is perfectly programmed and you're done. You're always evolving, always encountering new situations that challenge existing patterns, always learning and adapting. And that's good. That's being alive, being human, being engaged with the beautiful, complex, mysterious process of consciousness. So as you fall asleep tonight, know that your subconscious will keep working. It will process this information, integrate it with everything else, make connections you can't predict. Tomorrow, you might wake up with a new insight, a shift in perspective, a different way of seeing yourself and your possibilities. Your subconscious is listening, learning, evolving. And so are you. Because ultimately, you and your subconscious aren't separate. You're different aspects of one integrated whole, learning to work together, learning to be conscious and unconscious in harmony. Sleep well, dream well, trust the process. Your subconscious has got this, and so do you.